at her age, she's like, I can't see myself working at a UFC. And I go, well, why not? She goes, well, it's just, but they're in there fighting and doing everything else. I'm like, that is not what's going on at a UFC. That you might see some of that happening in a room somewhere, on a mat somewhere in a jiu-jitsu, space, or in, where there are a bunch of bags hanging and they're going through like a bags class or something like that. But the majority of the gym is your general fitness equipment. It would be like walking into anything else. Definitely a different vibe, right? It definitely feels maybe a little bit edgier, but you're going to see all walks of life. And the fact that UFC is crossed over that way is nothing short of fascinating to me.
Disney owns ESPN.
Right.
ESPN has the rights to the UFC fights.
Yeah, exactly.
So like Disney is showing the UFC fights. Like that's where we've gotten to. Right. From pay-per-views where they had to find a state that hadn't deregulated them, right? Yeah. From hosting fights in a state where there was no regulation stopping them.
Right.
And being on pay-per-views only, VHS tapes was how nobody watched UFC live.
Right.
Like it was your buddy had a VHS tape that had fights on it. To being on Spike. I remember it was a massive deal
to be
the first time they were on Fox. I remember Cub Swanson was telling us a story, the first fights that they had on Fox, and the Fox executives were losing their minds because it was just there was an exceptionally bloody fight, like eyebrow busted, nose busted, there's just blood. And he told us that in between rounds when they were cutting the commercials, like in the NBA when the guys run out with the mops to mop up the sweat, they had guys in the octagon wiping blood off of the octagon before they came back from commercial break.
Yep.
Now the Disney parent company is airing UFC. So now it's this mainstream thing, right? So last night I was taking a boxing conditioning class up in Torrance with the coach that was teaching the class, Chris Ortiz, just had his 6th pro fight this past weekend, won his 6th fight. That's the guy coaching the class, right? So it's not, I won't say names of brands, but like it's not a gym where, you've got, soccer mom teaching the boxing class.
Right.
I've got a pro fighter who just won a fight 3 days ago teaching class. And next to me on the bags, I've got these two members that they've been members of the gym for years. They're regulars. But they're these, 2 women that are, taking class, and they're in TRX class and they're in the group fitness room and they're taking the boxing class. I've got a person on the bag right next to me that's well overweight, pushing themselves. And it's a new member. I've never seen them before, but they're loving the class. And one of the other people in class is one of our other coaches who's a pro MMA fighter that
getting some conditioning in.
He's getting some conditioning in. And it's like, that's who's in class.
It's insane. So coming back to the comeback, so like the big gym, and it's not going to be all of them, but it's going to be gyms like UFC that are able to do this, that come back, and you just mentioned, like, it's not a soccer mom. I think this is interesting. It's not a soccer mom that's coaching the boxing class. This is a pro-level fighter. Now, when I think back 15 years ago, when we were, kind of running wild here in Southern California, when you walked into our gyms and we had these types of classes there, and the boxing thing was always a thing. I mean, we could tell stories about us trying to recruit these guys in and how difficult it was to work with these guys. But the bottom line is those are the guys you wanted in your classes because that's who the soccer mom wanted to train with.
Yes.
I want to train with the pro boxer. And I know I'm never going to be a pro boxer, but I want to be that person that trains in that class with that person. And then it got then boxing classes turned into, and then there was Taibo because people had seen that
proliferation.
But they recognized that wasn't really boxing. It's aerobics. It's an aerobic activity, and there's nothing wrong with Taibo. Billy Blanks did a fantastic job.
Do it.
Love that guy. Built an entire franchise, on his brand and what he did. But the point of that was that got old for people real quick. They wanted to hit shit, and they wanted to do it for real.
Yeah.
They didn't want to pretend. And, if that wasn't for you, that was fine, but people would line up. That's how Crunch got started, right? There were lines down the street to get in and do these boxing classes, Gorilla pulled up on that, and so they started all these studios. And so what ended up happening over time was those coaches that were making good money maybe doing it, and they were able to provide that service, and gyms or their employer took care of them in whatever way, or whether they were independent contractors or whatever, it lasted long enough until people started recognizing, well, I can pull out of this and I can build these little studios, right? And I can just offer this particular service on a much smaller footprint, much less overhead, make a lot of money doing it, and I have my little cult following here, and this works for a while until it doesn't. Because then you've scaled to a point where you can't handle anymore. You've worn yourself out. You've run a poor business. All of those things. And it's interesting that what we're seeing is it kind of trying to cycle
migration
back, right, to where the bigger boxes are now trying to kind of put the studio back into the bigger box. So it's like a studio inside.
Like you and I remember one time it was funny because we probably had about a 2-hour call, and I think back to this now how funny it is. We had like a 2-hour call, you and I, where we were talking about private training, group classes, just the complexity
of what
we're doing, right? This is probably 4 years ago. I was in the group fitness room at Sunnyvale. Like, I don't know why we were having a 2-hour call when I was in Sunnyvale.
You were just
like, I could have just drove over to the gym. But that conversation sticks out to me because for the first time, like, I feel like I wasn't trying to explain our business to somebody outside of the industry, and it was complicated. I was explaining our business to somebody who knows the industry very well, and it was complicated.
Right.
Like, because to your point, like, what we've done is said, there's going to be this exodus, this emigration from big boxes. And now, okay, how do we pull that tide back? And when I look at our brand, I go, there's boutiques within a box. I think about a mall. A mall is this massive building that has a bunch of different stuff going on in it. And none of those things are necessarily related to each other, right? There's a food court and there's a Victoria's Secret, like 10 seconds from each other.
Yep.
And so when you walk into one of our massive 50,000 square foot boxes, you've got this, and there's got to be a better way to describe it than functional training because that's just been abused and bastardized. But like, you've got our daily ultimate training, right? Which I also don't like labeling like high intensity interval training because that's not necessarily what the class is either. It's not CrossFit without barbells. It's not, but there's that going on, right? There's tires and there's med balls and there's kettlebells and there's, sprints and there's that community going on that loves doing that. And 20 feet away, there's a spin class going on or there's a Zumba class going on. And literally 4 feet away from that, there's a boxing class going, and the community that's in that boxing class. And a few feet away from that is all the meatheads in the free weight area pumping iron. And next to that, there's this, it's new to most people. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but it's this new emergence for most people. There's these 6 platforms, and there's people camped out doing Olympic lifts and all of that. And then next to that, there's this jiu-jitsu space going on. All of that is happening. Oh, and there's this youth gym over here where there's kids taking Muay Thai or jiu-jitsu.
Operation.
There's 7, 8 things going on all at once, all sort of surrounding your traditional cardio. There's all your treadmills and so you've got all these people that, to your point, like, okay, here's your people that might have been at this brand just because they show up to do cardio. And there's a jiu-jitsu community, and there's a Muay Thai community, and there's your group fitness. There's 8, 9 different ecosystems all interacting.